Also from me, welcome and thank you very much for joining us this evening for a presentation on the Book of Dzyan and the music of the spheres. In the introduction of the Secret Doctrine, it is stated that members of several esoteric schools claim to have in their possession the sum total of sacred and philosophical works in manuscript and type. All the works that had ever been written in whatever language or character since the art of writing began, from the ideographic hieroglyphs down to the alphabet of Cadmus, founder and first king of Thebes, the first Greek hero and slayer of monsters before the days of Heracles, and the Devanagari alphabet. Devanagari or Nagari alphabet developed from Eastern variants of the Gupta script Nagari, which first emerged during the 8th century. The script was starting to resemble the modern Devanagari alphabet by the 10th century. The name Devanagari is made up of two Sanskrit words, Deva, which means celestial, and Nagari, which means city. The name is variously translated as heavenly sacred script of the city or script of the city of the gods. Devanagari started to replace Siddham about 1200. The name Siddham comes also from Sanskrit and means perfected or accomplished. The Siddham script is mainly used by Shingon Buddhists in Japan to write out mantras and sutras in Sanskrit. Every work of character that might have led the profane to the ultimate discovery and comprehension of some of the mysteries of the sacred sciences was, in a combined effort of the members of the occult brotherhoods, diligently searched for and safely stored away since the destruction of the Alexandrian library, says HBB. In India, the last precious manuscripts were secured and hidden in the 16th century during the reign of the Indian Emperor Akbar. It is said that no bribes or threats by him could extort from the Brahmins the original text of the Vedas, and that the future may have some surprises in store for Orientalists. All the large and wealthy lamaseries have subterranean crypts and cave libraries cut in rock. Beyond the Saidam in the western Tibetan Karakoram mountains, there exists a small cluster of houses, a hamlet rather than a monastery, with a poor-looking temple. Pilgrims have said that the subterranean galleries and halls underneath contain a collection of books so enormous that they might not find room even in the British Museum. That which is given out in the volumes of the Secret Doctrine is a selection of oral as well as written teachings based upon stanzas, which are records of people unknown to ethnology, written in a tongue absent from languages and dialects with which philology is not acquainted, said to be emanated from an occult source, and that they will only be rejected in the 19th century. In the 20th century, scholars will begin to recognize that the Secret Doctrine, or Gupta Vidya, a Sanskrit term composed of two words, Gupta, derives from Sanskrit word Gupt, which means secret, while Vidya means knowledge or wisdom, is based on these writings. In the Theosophical tradition, this secret knowledge or secret wisdom is the source of all religions and theos and philosophies. Madame Blavatsky begins the first chapter of Isis Unveiled with the following words. There exists somewhere in this wide world an old book, so very old that our modern antiquarians might ponder over its pages an indefinite time, and still not agree as to the nature of the fabric upon which it is written. It is the only original copy now in existence. The most ancient Hebrew document on occult learning, the Sifra Zenuta, was compiled from it, and that at a time when the former was already considered in the light of a literary relic. In The Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky writes, "The very old book is the original work from which the many volumes of Kiu-Te were compiled. Not only this letter and the Sefer Dzyan, but even the Sefer Jesua, the work attributed by the Hebrew Kabbalists to their patriarch Abraham, the Book of King, China's primitive Bible, the sacred volumes of the Egyptian Hermes, the Puranas in India, and the Chaldean Book of Numbers and the Pentateuch itself are all derived from that one small parent volume. Tradition says that it was taken down in censer, the secret sacerdotal tongue from the word of divine beings who dictated it to the sons of light in Central Asia at the very beginning of the fifth hour race." In an article with the title The Secret Books of Lamrim and Dzyan, which was not published during her lifetime, Madame Blavatsky says that the Book of Dzyan, on which the Secret Doctrine is based, is one of the volumes of Kiu-Te. The Book of Dzyan, from the Sanskrit word dhyana, mystic meditation, is the first volume of the commentaries upon the 7 secret folios of Kiu-Te, and a glossary of the public works of the same name. 35 volumes of Kiu-Te for exoteric purposes, and the use of the layman may be found in the possession of the Tibetan Gelugpa Lamas, in the library of any monastery, and also 14 books of commentaries and annotations on the same by the initiated teachers. Strictly speaking, those 35 books ought to be termed the popularized version of the Secret Doctrine, full of myths, blinds, and errors. The 14 volumes of commentaries, on the other hand, with the translations, annotations, and an ample glossary of occult terms worked out from one small archaic folio, the big book of the secret wisdom of the world. It contains a digest of all the occult sciences. These volumes, it appears, are kept secret apart in the charge of the Teshu Lama of Shigatse. The books of Kiu-Te are comparatively modern, having been edited within the last millennium, whereas the earliest volumes of the commentaries, on the other hand, are of untold antiquity. In the introductory to The Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky writes, "One of the greatest and withal the most serious objection to the correctness and reliability of the whole work will be the preliminary stanzas. How can the statements contained in them be verified? The Book of Dzyan is utterly unknown to philologists, or at any rate has never been heard of by them under its present name. Fortunately, we have some more information about the books of Kiu-Te and Dzyan, on which the Secret Doctrine is based, thanks to the devoted research of David Pratt, a Dutch theosophist and historian, and David Reigel, an American theosophist, also an independent scholar of the Sanskrit scriptures of India and their Tibetan translations. He has written on the Buddhist Kalachakra teachings and has published research on the source books accepted in Theosophy, namely the books of Kiu-Te and the so-called Book of Dzyan. Despite all the information provided by Madame Blavatsky, the actual identity of the public books of Kiu-Te remained a mystery for over 80 years after her death. The existence of such books was called into question, and they were often dismissed as figments of our imagination. However, in 1975, H.H. Bierenburg identified the books of Kiu-Te as the Tibetan Buddhist Tantras, The correct transliteration of the Tibetan title is Kiu-Te, but Kiu-Te is a good approximation of the pronunciation. In 1981, David Reibel independently came to the same conclusion regarding the identity of the books of Kiu-Te, and he writes, as Madame Blavatsky said, they are indeed found in the library of any Tibetan Gelugpa monastery, as also in those of the other sects. And they are indeed highly occult works, being regarded by the entire Tibetan Buddhist tradition as embodying the Buddha's secret teachings. Only the spelling of the term foiled previous attempts to identify them. The spelling Kiu-Te is taken from the writings of the Capuchin monk Horace de la Pena. Madame Blavatsky quotes his extremely negative views on the books of Kiu-Te in her article, The Secret Books of Lamrim and Dzyan, and they are refuted by the Chuan Lama, the chief of the archive registrars of the secret libraries of the Dalai and Teshu Lumpu Lamas in Rinpoche. In an article entitled Tibetan Teachings, written at SBB's request, but not published until after her death. The Tibetan Buddhist sacred canon is divided in two parts, the Kanjur, containing the Buddha's words, and the Tanjur, containing commentaries. Reigel believes that the Book of Dzyan may be the Mula root Kalachakra Tantra, which is missing. Rather than being lost, it was probably withdrawn from the outer world, just as various other esoteric works have been either withdrawn or abridged. Given Madame Blavatsky's remark that the Book of Dzyan is the first volume of the commentaries upon the 7 secret folios of Kiu-Te, it is significant that the Lagu or abridged Kalachakra Tantra, which is still available, is always placed first among the books of Kiu-Te in editions of the Kanjur. The Kalachakra Tantra is the only Buddhist Tantra whose subject matter resembles the cosmogenesis and anthropogenesis of the Secret Doctrine. According to Reigel, Dzyan is a Tibetan phonetic rendering of the Sanskrit jnana, or wisdom, the result of dhyana, or meditation. And jnana is the title of the 5th and last section of the Kalachakra Tantra. However, none of the stanzas that Madame Blavatsky quotes from the Book of Dzyan has so far been located in the abridged Kalachakra Tantra, or in verses from the root Kalachakra Tantra quoted in other Buddhist writings. Madame Blavatsky states that the Kalachakra is the first and most important work in the Guru's division of Kanjur, the division of mystic knowledge. The Kalachakra Tantra is considered to be the pinnacle of the Buddha's esoteric doctrine, and is the only Tantra said to have come directly from Shambhala, which in Theosophical literature is regarded as the headquarters of the Brotherhood of Adepts. Furthermore, the Panchen or Tashi Lama is a special protector of Kalachakra in his monastery, Tashi Lumpur near Shigatse, and has been the major center of Kalachakra studies in Tibet. Madame Blavatsky states that the secret volumes of Kiu-Te are in the charge of the Tashi Lama, with whom her adept teachers were closely associated. In a letter to Franz Hartmann in 1886, she writes, "There is beyond the Himalayas a nucleus of adepts of various nationalities, and the Tashi Lama knows them, and they act together, and some of them are with him, and remain unknown in their true character even to the average lamas. My master and Kudumi and several others I know personally are there, coming and going." In the preface to The Voice of the Silence, Madame Blavatsky states that the work is a translation of extracts from the Book of the Golden Precepts, which is part of the same series as the Book of Dzyan. In the voice it is asked, "Would thou become a yogi of time's circle?" The voice goes on to say that to become such a yogi, one must not retreat into selfish seclusion, but follow the path of compassionate service to mankind. So kindly acts, and thou shalt reap their fruition. Inaction in a deed of mercy becomes an action in a deadly sin. Shalt thou abstain from action? No, so shall thy soul gain her freedom. To reach nirvana, one must reach self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is of loving deeds the child. In 1927, Alice Galiza, a personal student of Madame Blavatsky and Bessel Crump, issued a reprint of The Voice of the Silence under the auspices of the Chinese Buddhist Research Society in Peking. In their editorial foreword, they state that they undertook the work at the request of the ninth Panchen Lama, as the only true exposition in English of the hard doctrine of the Mahayana and its noble ideal of self-sacrifice for humanity. The Panchen Lama contributed a brief message on the path of liberation. David Reigel says that the time of the ninth Panchen Lama seemed to mark a new period of growth for the Kalachakra teachings. During his extensive travels, he established new Kalachakra colleges and monasteries in Tibet and Mongolia. While living in Peking, he presented the editors of The Voice of the Silence with a small Kalachakra treatise, and a few years later, in 1932, he there gave the Kalachakra initiation to an immense gathering. These large published initiations are meant to qualify candidates to begin the study and practice of the Kalachakra Tantra, or according to the present Dalai Lama, at least to establish a karmic relationship with the Kalachakra teachings. The Dalai Lama also gave the Kalachakra initiation in Madison, Wisconsin in July 1981, the first time it had been given in the West. Reigel hopes that the Sanskrit or Tibetan manuscript of the Book of Dzyan will be made available in the not too far distant future, as it will have a major impact on the academic world and undermine its skepticism towards Theosophy. We can be confident that the Book of Dzyan will be released as soon as the time is ripe, for the Mahatmas know best what knowledge is best for mankind at a particular stage of its evolution. So what do these ancient teachings tell us about the origin of the universe, the method by which it is brought about, and how far is modern science already able to confirm it? According to Madame Blavatsky's commentaries on the Secret Doctrine and her glossary, the nominal or essential nature of the ever-unknowable and divine essence of reality, which is called Sat in Sanskrit and beingness by Theosophists, is without space and time. But there is still duration and abstract space, which always is, even if there is no one to perceive it. It is a field of primordial or latent consciousness. There was neither silence nor sound, naught, save ceaseless eternal breath or motion, which knows itself not. The one element containing a vehicle is space, dimensionless in every sense, coexistent with it are endless duration, primordial and indestructible matter, and absolute perpetual motion, which is called breath of the one element only in the spiritual aspect of cosmogony by archaic esotericism, which can never cease, not even during pralaya or rest. The breath of one existence, on the other hand, does not apply to the one causeless cause or the all beingness, but to Brahma, the cause of potencies that are to be generated for the work of creation. Space as an abstraction is endless, but in its concreteness and limitation, it becomes a representation of something. Parabrahm, beyond Brahma, the absolute, impersonal, and nameless universal principle, is the one essence from which starts into existence a center of energy, the Logos. In almost every doctrine, they have formulated the existence of a center of spiritual energy, which is unborn and eternal. In the foreword to his book Antimatter, Frank Close, professor of physics at Oxford University, refers to the opening words of Genesis. In the beginning, there was nothing. There was darkness on the face of the void. Then came a burst of energy, let there be light. And there was light. So where it came from, I don't know. What we do know is what happened next. This energy coagulated into matter and its mysterious opposite antimatter in perfect counterbalance. Madame Blavatsky explains it like this. When the first unmanifested logos radiates through primordial or undifferentiated matter in Laya, which is a Sanskrit term meaning 0 point, where everything is undifferentiated and changeless, there is no action in chaos, neither space nor time. Draw a deep line in your thought between that ever incognizable essence and the invisible yet comprehensible presence, Mula Prakriti, or undifferentiated root substance. From beyond and through which vibrates the sound of the verbum, and from which evolve the numberless hierarchies of intelligent beings, whose essence is spiritual force, whose substance is the elements, and whose bodies, when needed, are the atoms. This subtle supersensuous spiritual essence or primordial substance, which pervades all space, is also called Akasha in Sanskrit. Inherent in it lies the eternal ideation of the universe in its ever-changing aspects on the plane of matter and objectivity, and from which radiates the first logos, or expressed thought. In the Puranas it is stated that Akasha has but one attribute, sound, which is septenary. For sound is a translated symbol of logos or speech in its mystic sense. Creative speech, or verbum, is the seminal principle scattered throughout the universe. The divine resonance is only the outbreathing of the first sound, Aum, the power which stirs up and animates the particles of the universe. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wings simultaneously the whole universe and the germ that dwells in darkness, the darkness that breathes, moves over the slumbering waters of life. In the Secret Doctrine it is said that by virtue of an eternal, uncreated, and changeless law, everything in manifested nature unfolds on a sevenfold principle, which causes the great periods of activity and rest, or what Hindu philosophy calls the days and nights of Brahma. It is a development of limitless subjectivity into limitless objectivity. It is not an increase in size, but a change of condition, which is, as the stanzas of Dzyan tell us, caused by the last vibration of the seventh eternity, or last period of activity that thrills through infinitude when a new Manvantara, or active period, is about to begin. And this last vibration, announcing a new dawn, is synonymous with the first unmanifested logos at the time of the primordial radiation, or the first light that appears. The Greek term logos was with every nation and people the manifested deity, or the effect of a cause which is ever concealed. Thus, speech is a logos of thought, and translated by verbum or word in its metaphysical sense. This is symbolized by a point in the circle, a circle that has neither boundaries nor name nor attributes. The point is simultaneous with the line drawn across the diameter, symbolizing the father-mother aspect, which is according to the Hindu Puranas called Akasha, the supersensuous spiritual essence or primordial substance. Its one attribute is, as we have heard before, sound, the expression of unuttered thought, which is a second logos, and with it space and periodical time begins. When the hour strikes for the second logos to appear, then from the latent potentiality radiates a lower field of differentiated consciousness, which is Mahas, the collectivity of those Dhyanicurans. The highest intelligence is charged with the supervision of cosmos, of which Mahat, or the first principle of universal intelligence and consciousness, is the representative. The Mahatma Gotami says in letter 67, like every other orb of space our Earth has, before obtaining its ultimate materiality, passed through a gamut of 7 stages of density. I say gamut advisedly, since the diatonic scale best affords an illustration of the perpetual rhythmic motion of the descending and ascending cycle of primordial matter, or Svabhavat, graduated as it is by tones and semitones. According to the Secret Doctrine, man was regarded in several systems as the third logos, as the esoteric meaning of the word logos, speech or word or verbum, is the rendering in objective expression, as in a photograph, of the concealed thought. The logos is a mirror reflecting divine mind, and the universe is a mirror of the logos, the essence of that universe. As the logos reflects all in the universe of Pleroma, a divine world or universal soul, so man reflects in himself all that he sees and finds in his universe, the earth. But how does vibration and sound manifest a phenomenal universe? Is the music of the spheres a fact or a fiction? A good demonstration is already given by the study of cymatics, a Greek term meaning waves, associated with the physical patterns produced through the interaction of sound waves in a medium. Today we know that any tone played on a musical instrument or sung by a human voice activates a column of mathematically related notes, which vibrate sympathetically with the sound of pitch or tone, which create resonance. A legend says that Pythagoras was walking by a blacksmith shop, and he heard the sound of different hammers in action. He noticed that there was a variety of pitches emitted from the striking of the anvil at different angles. Hearing familiar harmonies, he went into the shop and found out that it was the different weight of the hammer that determined the sound. A hammer weighing half as much as another one produced a sound twice as high. This aroused his curiosity even more, and he started his investigation into sound and harmony by setting up an experiment using strings and weights. He observed that a string with 12 weights, for example, and another one with 6 weights produced an octave. He started experimenting with a monochord, a one-stringed instrument, and found out that by dividing the string at the halfway point, he produced an octave, or a ratio of 1:2. Dividing the string into various other lengths with frets, intervals of 3:4 and 5:8 were produced. Other tests showed that all simple musical instruments work in much the same way, whether they are struck, plucked, or blown. The amplitude or maximum extent of vibration and the size of the sound-producing instrument are factors regulated by number. The vibrational frequency of a stretched string is universally proportional to its length. Pythagoras' pioneering work became the groundwork for the modern science of acoustical physics, assigning mathematical data as a basis for harmonious sounds. deeply impressed by the link between music and number, Pythagoras came to the metaphysical conclusion that all nature consists of harmony, arising from number, that cosmos is music, and music number, being behind everything in nature. Any tone played or sung activates a mixture of overtones, creating a unique quality of a musical sound distinct from its pitch. The same note can be played on a piano, for example, a guitar, a violin, or a trumpet, yet they all sound different and yet are all in total harmony. By associating measurement of length with musical tones, Pythagoras made the first reduction of a quality, sound, into a quantity, length and ratio. He also recognized that the musical octave is the simplest and most profound expression of the relationship between spirit and matter, because the miracle of the octave is that it divides wholeness into two audible, distinguishable parts, yet remains cognizable as the same musical note, a tangible manifestation of the hermetic maxim, as above, so below. The profoundly influential Pythagorean brotherhood tried to unite religion and science, mathematics and music, medicine and cosmology, body, mind, and spirit in an inspired and luminous synthesis. The Pythagoreans also used music to heal the body and to elevate the soul, that the human organism responds to the various relationships of sound. Yet they believed that earthly music was no more than a faint echo of the universal harmony of the spheres, the planetary spheres ascending from earth to heaven like the rung of a ladder. Each sphere was said to correspond to a different note of a grand musical scale. That particular tones emitted by the planets depend upon the ratios of their respective orbits, just as the tone of a lyre string depends on its length. Pythagoras also turned the gamut of the diatonic scale, 7 tones, into the chromatic scale, 12 tones, which we use today by adding the 5 half tones as seen on the keyboard of the piano. Other philosophers of the ancient world, like Plato, Pliny, and Ptolemy amongst them, also contemplated the music of the spheres. This doctrine was transmitted to medieval Europe, where it also inspired Copernicus, Robert Flatt, as well as Kepler. Plato once described astronomy and music as twin studies of sensory recognition. Astronomy for the eyes, music for the ears, and both requiring knowledge of numerical proportion. So what did science find out about vibrations resulting in sound, color, and mass? Is the music of the spheres more a fact than a fiction? Madame Blavatsky says in her collected writings, every atom in every object of nature sings its own keynote and produces its own sound, has its own color and number, a play and interplay of sounds loud and faint, interblending in a marvelous symphony. In his book, The Elegant Universe, Brian Greene, professor of physics and mathematics at Columbia University in New York, says that physicists use the term amplitude to describe the maximum height or depth of a wave. If electromagnetic waves sound a bit abstract, another good analogy are the waves produced by plucking a violin string. Violin strings can undergo an infinite number of different vibrational patterns, known as resonance, which are wave patterns whose peaks and troughs are evenly spaced and fit perfectly between the strings to endpoints. Our ear senses these different resonant vibrational patterns as different musical notes. The stuff of all matter and all forces is the same. Each elementary particle is a single string, and all strings are absolutely identical. differences arouse because their respective strings undergo different resonant vibrational patterns, just different notes on a fundamental string. The violin string gives rise to different musical notes. The different patterns of a fundamental string gives rise to different masses and force charges. The ends of a violin string are pinned down, ensuring that they have a fixed length. But there's no constraining frame that pins down the size of a fundamental string. The huge string tension causes the loops to contract to a minuscule size. The greater the tension the string is under, the harder it is to get it to vibrate. The string with higher tension will have more energy than the one with lower tension, since more energy must be exerted to set it in motion. But no matter how placid a string might appear, it will always experience some amount of quantum vibration. Nothing in nature is ever perfectly at rest. If string theory is right, the microscopic fabric of our universe is a richly intertwined, multidimensional labyrinth within which the strings of the universe endlessly twist and vibrate, rhythmically beating out the laws of the cosmos. Far from being accidental details, the properties of nature's building blocks are deeply entwined with the fabric of space and time. The universe, being composed of an enormous number of these vibrational strings, is akin to a cosmic symphony, says Professor Green. And Michiko Kaku, professor of physics at City University in New York, confirms this in his book, Parallel Worlds, that the heart of an electron, for example, is not a point particle, but an extremely tiny string. If you were to pluck this string, the vibration would change. The electron might turn into a neutrino or a quark. It could turn into any of the known subatomic particles we know, because they are but different notes on a superstring and not fundamental. Only the string is. The universe can now be seen as a vast symphony of strings. According to how can this information be related to our human constitution? According to HPB's collected writings, our souls are as if it were music, with which our bodies are the instrument. The music exists without the instrument, but it cannot make itself heard without a material intermediary. The immaterial can neither be conceived nor grasped. Hence, spirit cannot communicate. No ego differs from another ego in its primordial or original essence and nature. That which makes one mortal a grand man and another vulgar, silly person is, as said, the quality and makeup of the physical shell or casing, and the adequacy or inadequacy of brain and body to transmit and give expression to the light of the real inner man. And this aptness or inaptness is, in turn, the result of karma. Or to use another simile, physical man is a musical instrument, and the ego the performing artist. The music exists without the instrument, but it cannot make itself heard without a material intermediary. The immaterial can neither be conceived or grasped, hence spirit cannot communicate. The potentiality of perfect melody of sound is in the former, the instrument, and no skill of the latter can awaken a faultless harmony out of a broken or badly made instrument. This harmony depends on the fidelity of transmission, by word or act, to the objective plane of the unspoken divine thought in the very depths of man's subjective or inner nature. Physical man may, to follow our simile, be a priceless Stradivarius, or a cheap and cracked fiddle, or again a mediocrity between the two in the hands of the Paganini who ensouls him. Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist and retired professor from the University of Arizona, known for his studies of consciousness, has developed a theory called orchestrated objective reduction, together with Sir Roger Penrose, an English physicist, mathematician, and philosopher of science, and emeritus professor at the Mathematical Institute of Oxford University. In an article called "Is Our Brain Really a Computer, or is it a Quantum Orchestra?" Hanmerov writes that the brain is actually more looking like an orchestra or a multi-scalar vibrational resonance system. So what are scalar waves? Scalar waves are also referred to as Tesla waves, named after Nikola Tesla, the Serbian-American inventor, electrical engineer, physicist, and futurist. These longitudinal waves are capable of penetrating any solid object, including Faraday cages. The transmitter can be placed in a box of thick metal, and the receiver outside of the box receives the scalar wave. Scalar waves are capable of passing through the Earth from one side to another with no loss of field strength, as Tesla showed in one of his experiments. Traveling faster than the speed of light, superluminal, scalar waves are not electromagnetic, but composed of pure zero energy. Hamerov says that brain information patterns repeat over hierarchies of neuronal networks with resonant and interference beats. We know what it is like to be conscious, to have awareness, a conscious mind. But who or what are we who know such things, and how can it be explained in scientific terms? Consciousness is presumed to emerge from complex neuronal computation, having arisen during biological evolution as an adaptation of living systems, extrinsic to the makeup of the universe. On the other hand, the spiritual and contemplative tradition, as well as some scientists and philosophers, consider consciousness to be intrinsic, woven into the fabric of the universe, existing all along in the fine-scale structure of reality. The theory of orchestrated objective reduction can bridge these two approaches. It suggests that consciousness arises from quantum vibrations, protein polymers, called microtubules in the brain's neurons. They are vibrations that interfere, collapse, and resonate across the scale. They control neuronal firings, generate consciousness, and connect ultimately to deeper ripples in space-time geometry. That consciousness is more like music than computation, or the act of mathematical calculation. I would like to close now with a deeply philosophical and symbolical story, which was published in the Theosophy in March 1886. It is contained in the letters of Madame Blavatsky to H.B. Sinnett. This fable is attributed to Dr. Franz Hartmann, a German theosophist at the time of HBB. And the story goes like this. Once upon a time, in a country far across the Indian Ocean, there was a society of people who wanted to hear and investigate the music of the spheres. They called their society harmony, but there was very little harmony among them. On the contrary, they quarreled a great deal amongst each other, for their society was made up of men and women of different nationalities, different characters, and different opinions. But to make up for this deficiency, they had in their possession a musical instrument, upon which, if it was properly tuned, the music of the spheres could be heard. But this instrument, however, was almost constantly out of tune, and the winds from the four corners of the earth would then blow into it, and it would give forth, on such occasions, very discordant sounds. To attune it, it was necessary that the great genius from the upper spheres should descend and put it in order, so that the music of the spheres could be heard. It was indeed a very queer instrument, and what is still more remarkable about it is the fact, which will hardly be believed by sensible people, that if a person whose mind was very inharmonious would come near it, it would begin to make a very disagreeable noise. The safekeeping of that instrument was entrusted to the president of that society, and that president was so proud of its mysterious qualities that he wanted to show it to everybody and asked everybody to come and listen to the harmony of the spheres. Now, there was a society of non-musical but learned men in a country not far from there. And the president of the Harmonial Society went to them and told them about his mysterious instrument. They, however, didn't believe him and said that there was no such thing as music of the spheres. The intrepid president, however, insisted that there was, and he promised that he would that they would send someone to look at the instrument. He would show them how it was constructed, and he would ask the great genius of the upper spheres to come and play a tune for their instruction and edification. Consequently, the learned men of the West put their heads together and consulted with each other. And the result was that they selected a smart boy and asked him to go across the big water to look at the great genius from the upper spheres, and to report the result of his observations to those whose heads had grown to be gray in the acquisition of scientific opinion. The smart boy went and looked at the instrument. But when he came there, it gave forth only discordant sounds, because his own soul was not in harmony with it. And the more he worked with it, the more discordant it had become. The president then took out his book of incantations and tried all kinds of conjurations to force a genius from the upper sphere to come and play a tune for the smart boy. But the genius would not come. So the smart boy took his traveling bag and went home again and told his fathers in learning that he did not see the great genius and did not hear the music of the spheres. And the learned men stuck their heads together a second time and consulted with each other. And the result was that they said the smart boy was wise and that the president of the Harmonial Society was mistaken. Now, when the members of the Harmonial Society heard that important decision, they became very distressed, and they went and destroyed the instrument because they said that if they could not have an instrument upon which the music of the spheres could be heard at all times, they would rather have no instrument at all. Consequently, the society dissolved, and the members went their way. Some of them attempted to tune their own souls to the harmony of the spheres. Others believed that the great genius had never existed. But the keeper of the instrument went down and wept bitterly. In a message to us, Madame Blavatsky comments on the instrument and the Harmonial Society like this. The present instrument could never have been destroyed by any learned society. It is the unlearned in things occult and spiritual among the members of the Harmonial Society, who are now breaking it to atoms themselves, those for whom the old instrument has played itself to death, and that was the first to draw their attention and open their ears to the music of the spheres, however purely it may have rendered the heavenly melody itself. And now it lies broken into fragment, shattered more every day by the kicks of those for whom it sang and labored. But the genius of the spheres means to pick up the mangled pieces of the instrument once more and glue them together as he alone can. No violin is played better upon, none admits more musical sounds than that one which was broken and mended. The Paganini of the broken Stradivarius is still alive, and will play upon it again, but only for those few who will attune their souls indeed to the music of the spheres. The instrument will belong to these and have no keeper. How many such few will remain? Time will tell soon. And that is the end. Thank you.